All right, we'll let people file in here. Wait another minute to let the Zoom populate. Welcome tonight, folks. Okay, let's get started. Welcome to another installation of Teach 250, Inspiring a More Perfect Union. And my name is Jeremy Goldstein. I'm the Vice President of Program at the Trust for the National Mall. And this is the Trust for the National Mall is a leading nonprofit, nonpartisan philanthropic partner of the National Park Service. And we're dedicated to restoring, enriching, and preserving the National Mall. We're very excited about tonight's program, From the Ballpark to the Classroom, exploring America's history through baseball with the Washington Nationals. And we're happy that you all joined us for this very special summer and fall themed Teach 250. And we are in the 250th anniversary, so please, of our country. So please do join us periodically for these great Teach 250 professional development opportunities. Let's take a look at the agenda for tonight. This is brought to you, of course, by Destination DC, the Trust for the National Mall, and the National Park Service on the Mall. And without further ado, I'll hand it over to our partner, my esteemed colleague, Lindsay Hill at Destination DC. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you, Jeremy, and thanks to all of you for joining tonight. This is a really exciting conversation for all of us. So good evening. I hope everyone is staying warm. My name is Lindsay Hill. I am the Director of Visitor Experience and Group Tour at Destination DC, which is the official tourism bureau for Washington, DC. We're so excited to partner with the National Park Service, National Mall and Memorial Parks, the Trust for the National Mall, and tonight, the one and only Washington Nationals for this webinar series. Our hope is to highlight the many resources available to you from city partners, whether in classroom lesson plans, virtual workshops, or in-person tours. Because there's only one place where you can learn about the nation's founding documents for free while understanding the local perspective that informs natural history. On the next slide, you will see showcased through 6 crafted themes that we have designed to touch on American accomplishments through history, art, science, and sports, with the DC story intertwined, as well as what the next 250 years will bring. We have created a microsite. Washington, DC has provided what you need on this microsite to commemorate America's 250th birthday all year long through themed itineraries, special exhibits, and iconic celebrations, all found at dc250.us. And additionally, we just launched an education resource page within the site to help guide you in your DC-based discussions. You can easily view that page at dc250.us/education. And hopefully we will see you in 2026. And now, without further ado, I am pleased to introduce Ashley Hazley, Senior Director of Youth Programming, to take us on a journey of baseball, history, DC, and the Nats.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. Extremely excited to be here. And for everyone that has joined our webinar today, I'm just going to share my screen. Give me a second. Click here. All right. So tonight we are going to talk a little bit about the role that baseball can play when we're having conversations about the history of the United States. So welcome and thank you all for joining us for From Baseball to the Classroom, exploring American history through baseball. Baseball is often touted as America's national pastime. I think that when we think about baseball, it is the sport that has really been with our country lockstep since since the 19th century, right? Baseball is deeply intertwined with American culture. And when we're talking about the history and the ethos of our country, baseball is an incredibly good way to kind of hone in on some of those historical points that have gotten us to where we are today, and helps us kind of understand the ways that we come together as a nation. Um, a writer quoted by the Library of Congress, Gerald Early, says, "I think of only three things. I think there are only three things that America will be known for 2,000 years from now, and that's the Constitution, jazz music, for which I am a huge fan, as well as the Constitution, and baseball." So we're going to talk today in themes. And the first theme that baseball can really help us drive home with is national identity and patriotism, right? How did baseball get coined to be our national pastime? Well, the Sunday edition of the New York Mercury in 1856 posted a thought piece declaring baseball as the nation's pastime. Um, at that time, we go from it just kind of being stick and ball. There's not a lot of rules around the sport. Preceding that thought piece, rules around the sport start to be declared and established, and we start to see baseball used during difficult times to build morale within our country, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. We then have in 1909 Representative John Turner or Tenner of Pennsylvania organizes the first congressional baseball game. The reason why this is important is the congressional baseball game is hosted annually. It's actually hosted at Nats Park, which we'll talk a little bit about later. And it is a bipartisan competition. Both kind of sides come together. There's a congressional baseball game for charity, where we are having bipartisan fundraising for charity. And then there is a nice friendly game of baseball that, again, started all the way back in 1909 and is a true bipartisan effort. And then in 1918, we have the Star-Spangled Banner sung at a baseball game. In 1918, we have the Star-Spangled Banner sung in a baseball game for the first time, really cementing baseball as a very patriotic sport, with our nation and the ethos of our country at the forefront. Another way that we can talk about baseball, we can talk about the history of our country through the lens of baseball is different wars that our country has fought, as well as the morale that baseball provided. We think back to World War One. Baseball is most certainly used to boost the morale of troops. In fact, about 30%, 38% of players ended up serving in various branches of the military, due to selective service rules that came out in 1918. A fun fact is also in that year, baseball was paused. The World Series was delayed, and it shook up things a little bit in the country, which is why when we come to World War II, President Roosevelt actually writes what we call the Green Light Letter, which cleared the way for baseball to be played during the war. President Roosevelt saw baseball as an important way to boost morale of folks, not just overseas, but also here at home. He writes, "I honestly feel that it would be best for the country to keep baseball going. There will be fewer people unemployed, and everybody will be working longer hours and harder than ever before. And that means that they ought to have a chance for recreation and for taking their minds off their work even more than before." That is the role that baseball played for our country, both in World War One for boosting morale, and then was kind of cemented as supposed to be that pastime in World War II. Also in World War II, we have so many people, so many men that were overseas that the All American Girls Professional Baseball League took field in 1943. Now, women were playing baseball far before this, but having an actual league, we think about the movie A League of Their Own. It comes around in 1943 in response to what is happening in World War II. Another important theme that we can think about when it comes to baseball and we can definitely teach about is civil rights and integration. Back in baseball's inceptions, and we think about like the National League, owners came together and they said that they only wanted white players to play on their teams. And so that led in February 13th, 1920, for the Negro National League to be founded, more commonly referred to as the Negro Leagues. Here in DC, our Negro League team affiliate is the Homestead Grays, and we'll learn a little bit more about them in a future slide. But then we come over into 1947 when Jackie Robinson breaks the color barrier when he first takes the field with the Brooklyn Dodgers. Now, Jackie had been playing with the Dodgers in their minor league affiliate team before that, but truly breaking that color barrier in baseball and setting the path for what this sport looks like integrated happened on April 15th, 1947. Then we get to 2020. Major League Baseball officially designates the Negro Leagues teams as part of the major leagues, which kind of raised the status of the Negro Leagues and also allowed for a really big research project to start. We have Negro Leagues teams who are setting their own records, but because they weren't deemed as a part of Major League Baseball, those records were not paid attention to, right? So in 2020, not only are the Negro League teams designated as a part of MLB, but there's also a research push to find all of the records that Negro League players set when they were playing in the Negro National League, which leads us to 2024, which is when those stats were finished. They found them and they were officially included in the Major League record, making players like Josh Gibson of the Homestead Grays, our Negro League affiliates team, to kind of beat out key players such as Babe Ruth in various categories. And so, just to kind of wrap up some things around baseball and history, there are a lot of different ways that baseball can tie to the themes that I referenced beforehand. But here in DC, hopefully you all are coming to visit DC, right? We have our World Series win in 1924, back when we were the Washington Senators. We've also got a World Series win in 2019 that you'll hear a little bit more about later on in this webinar. We've got key figures in baseball history. So on this slide, you'll see William Hoy. William Hoy is a former Washington Senators player who is the reason why umpires use different hand signs. William Hoy was a deaf player. I can't say if he was the first deaf baseball player, but most certainly a notable one, where in order to have him be included, umpires needed to start creating hand signs and that is kind of where we get the history of hand signs, which are still used to communicate from umpires to catchers to pitchers through the sport. We also have one of my personal heroes, Josh Gibson. Josh Gibson, like I said, was played for the Homestead Grays, our Negro Leagues affiliate team. And once the stats got into the official record, we start to see some of these Negro League players outshine former records that were held by folks, like I said, such as Babe Ruth. And then just to kind of shout out to the Congressional Baseball Game for charity, the Nationals host that event annually. So this really big bipartisan effort comes together at Nats Park every single year. We're really excited already and talks about it for the future. So before I turn it over to questions, just for you all to know, if you're thinking about coming to DC this summer, definitely consider joining us at Nats Park. We have a baseball history exhibit that is hosted in partnership with the Library of Congress and other special opportunities for groups where you can engage in the history of our sport while at the stadium. And there is a great email address if you want to get connected to any of those resources. But are there any questions or things that I can expand upon? Let's see, I'll go into the chat here. Let's see. Oh my goodness, I see we've got one of our Grand Slam schools folks in the chat. Hello, Coach Hannah. Let's see. So Negro League stats are not considered MLB stats. The MLB had already had the first female professional players, right? I do not have the exact information on if the all girls professional league was included into the MLB official record. But I do know that we're very excited about the professional softball teams that are getting started now. So I know that's not an exact answer to your question, but if it isn't already something that's being done, it's not something that's already been achieved. I'm sure it's something that's being worked on.
Ashley, I have a question.
Of course.
I noticed you mentioned that the Star Spangled Banner was, the date where it was first sung at a baseball game, but was that sort of the first time, if you know, that it was used, for a sporting event?
I don't know if it was the first time that it was used for a sporting event, but I would I would bet that if it wasn't the first time, it was probably one of the most notable times, considering that baseball had already been established as like the national pastime, and the Star Spangled Banner, is essential to the
Mm,
baseball experience. The only sport that I would conceive would maybe played the Star Spangled Banner earlier could have been football, but I believe that baseball would have been the first one.
right. And I also I'm kind of going in the weeds here, but I'm just curious. There is, when it comes to the seventh inning stretch, there is one of the stories is that it was from a president who that sort of was created around. Do you have any insight or what that story is?
I do not want to misquote this story. So I do not is the honest answer, but I'm curious if any of our other baseball fans that are on the call um might have some of that info.
There are two other questions for you
Yeah.
specifically. If one of the gateway people want to look up that story real quick. But one is from Lauren. She says, would love to hear more about what sparked your interest in baseball.
Yeah, of course. So for me, I will be honest with you. I think that sports can be a great connector for people. And so I was very interested in what it looked like um, for a sport that is America's national pastime. I've done community work at the collegiate level as well. I will say, unfortunately for me, I played one softball game my whole life. And as soon as the ball was pitched to me, I maybe walked off the plate. So I'm most certainly more skilled at the behind the desk part of baseball. But very, very excited to be a part of the sport, and something that has such significance for history for us.
Awesome. And there's one other from Tom. He
Mhm.
says, do you happen to have a story to share about his baseball hero Walter Johnson, his performance in the 1924 World Series as legend?
I am sorry, I do not have more than that. He had a great performance in the night in that World Series. My apologies.
And thank you to Jeff. We were given a summary of the story. It was President William Howard Taft, who supposedly started the baseball tradition around 1910 when he was uncomfortable in his seat, stood up to stretch, and then the crowd stood up with him out of respect as the president rises, you also stand. So
And
that is the one of the stories of the origination of the seventh inning stretch.
that's a good note to push learners to just say what they know are true, because I was like, I'm pretty sure that it's Taft, but I would really hate to get that story incorrect.
Yes.
Thank you. Were there any other questions based on some of the points that I talked about that could
Oh,
be assistance
yeah.
on?
Catherine asks, when did the Senators become the Nationals?
So sorry that I'm not prepared with that. I'm not great with dates. My apologies. Give me 1 second and I will get that information for you all.
Looks like it was all the way back in 1905.
Yeah, so I think Ashley is the expert on this, so we will defer to her. But I think ultimately that this is the Nationals and the Senators and the names kind of interchanged for a little while. And they went back and forth before the Senate. I think when they officially settled on a team early on, and then early 1900s, it was the Washington Senators. Um, but Ashley will
Yes, we have gone
was I
back.
correct, basically?
Yeah. We have got it. The name has changed a couple of times, going back to the Senators. Looks like in 1956 to 1960, but at that time it wasn't the Washington Senators; it was just the Senators. And then the Nationals came back to DC in 2005.
Great. Any other questions for Ashley in the chat? Just make sure we round them out. And well, thank you so much, Ashley, for all the knowledge and all the history of this of baseball. Where I'm a huge baseball fan, as some of the folks who know me well. And it was really interesting. I learned a lot from it. So I think there is a lot more to learn from sports. And I think when we think about the National Mall, we think about a lot of different things. Some of us think about only the memorials and monuments, but some of us think about the recreational uses of the National Mall as well. And sports in public spaces are really important for young people, for old people, for spectators, for players, for all pieces of it. So, Ashley, thank you so much for all that you did for this webinar. We really appreciate it.
No worries. Thank you all so much again. Please feel free to shoot us an email if you are planning to come to DC. Would love to connect you with some more things around history of our sport. And I can't echo more that baseball has truly been in the United States for quite a long time. So if you were thinking about any like kind of timelines around our country, baseball stands as a very strong way to kind of talk about those more national themes. So thank you all.
Thanks. When you have a moment, if you can, I will take the screen back from you but no problem. You're doing many things. And then I will talk for just a few moments about the National Mall Gateway and how it connects to baseball, and especially for our friend Tom in the chat, we'll talk a little bit about Walter Johnson. I think we're going to talk about Walter Johnson, but I'll verify that right now. Let me share my screen. Great. Perfect. Sure it pops up. There we go. So many of you know that we launched the National Mall Gateway on September 17th on Constitution Day. And as we are adding more content, we'll be adding lots more content every month through the 250 and going forward. But we added 2 pieces of content specifically for this webinar, but about 2 things that took place on the National Mall. So first one is from our this is called From the Archives, Baseball on the National Mall. So you'll start to see photographs. We're going to have a lot more mall moments of photographs on the National Mall, archival photographs that Daiki on our team has found for us. And we are so excited to share them with you all so you can see some glimpses of the past on the National Mall. So if you go to gateway.nationalmall.org, you'll be able to see all these mall moments and the rest and more. But right now, when you click on our mall moments, you'll see From the Archives, Baseball on the National Mall. And we have a bunch of photographs throughout history of baseball on the National Mall. You can see different teams playing, different leagues that were there. And this is what I was sort of talking about earlier, how the National Mall is many things. And one of the things is it's a public park for so many DC residents. You can see all sorts of incredible photos here. And soon there'll be reflection questions on the bottom so you can share with them with your students as well. The other newest one that I'm very excited to talk to you about is the Charles Gabby Street in 1908 from a wager from 2 fans caught a baseball dropped from the top of the Washington Monument. We're calling the story Gabby Street and the Monumental Catch because, come on. You can talk a little bit about the history of DC right here, sort of what Ashley was talking about, all the different teams that were in DC. We talk about how the monument was built and the story behind the monument, right? So I think that's a big part of, this story as well, to understand that the monument was unfinished for a long time. And finally, when it gets finished, it is a huge thing, not just in the capital city, but across the country. People are talking about it. People were giving them fundraising across the country for it in the first place, sending commemorative stones from all over the country, and I think the world, to the Washington Monument. So, of course, when it is built, it is now a thing that everybody is super interested in and, enamored with it, and also trying to understand its place in Washington, D.C. And a lot of different baseball players were really into this idea about, could you catch a ball if it was dropped from the top, right? So we wrote this story aimed at, the National Mall Gateway is aimed at middle school students. So this is hopefully at a middle school level. We're working on making sure that tone and voice is always appropriate for middle school students, but also fits for high school students and also fits for adults as well. If I'm pulling up my chat as well, but I think Tom was asking about Walter Johnson, and if I was correct, yeah, Walter Johnson became, Gabby Street was one of Walter Johnson's favorite catchers. Gabby talked a lot, and he always kept the game going and kept his pitchers engaged. So I think what Walter Johnson really liked that about him, and I think that's why Walter Johnson, favored him as his catcher of choice. We talk a little bit about the catch right here. There was a wager on it. We could always the history of baseball and the history of betting are intertwined. There's a lot to learn and think about and those sorts of things. But even here in this story, it starts with a bet that Gabby Street would he be able to catch a ball off the top of the Washington Monument? I will spoil the story. The answer is yes. After it took multiple times. It wasn't, the big problem really was how to get the ball arched far enough so that it didn't just go right down and hit the monument itself. So we talked through that. You'll get to see some of the other cards. You could see some of Gabby's baseball cards. You could read about after Gabby, then a couple other players did try that as well, and they were successful. But the thing to know is that they are sealed shut now. So unfortunately, that feat will likely never be done again. It can definitely not be done by anyone going to the monument because those windows are sealed shut. So unfortunately, even if you want to, there's no option to do that. But we're really excited about this story because we think that this story really tells a little bit of a different take on the National Mall. That, and I think that when everyone thinks of it, we think of the memorials, and I think that is important. But the mall is a lot of things. The mall is America's front yard for a reason. And, on our front yard, we talk politics, we learn from each other, and we play sports together. So when I think of the National Mall, I think of those things. I'm going to hop back into our slide deck, and then I will wrap up our presentation. If there are more questions, please drop them in the chat. I do not see any more questions right there. The National Mall Gateway is right there. Please be part of our team. Sign up for an account. When you sign up for an educator account, we will be sending out a classroom resource kit to our educators, the first 250 educators who sign up. Inside of that, you'll get some swag from the National Mall Gateway. We have these maps that we have printed, which we love. We're also working on baseball cards, which we're really excited about, but they are still prototypes, so I unfortunately cannot show them to you quite yet. But if you do sign up for an account, when they are ready to go, we will be shipping those out to classrooms as well. The National Mall Gateway team will be at a few different conferences. I'll be at the one in Virginia this week, and then I'll also be one in Delaware at the end of February. Jeremy, on the beginning of the call, he'll be out in North Carolina, and then we'll be at, for the next year, we're going to be promoting the Gateway, getting it ready for the 250th. So we have one more webinar coming up soon. Let me just pull up that. The next webinar will be on February 24th, MLK Beyond the March. Join us for a look at other occasions that MLK came to DC and what motivated his visits while he was on the mall. We're excited to see you there. We're excited to see you on the National Mall Gateway and on the National Mall. Thank you for being part of this webinar. Thank you to Ashley. Thank you to Lindsay. And we'll end with this slide here of when in 2019, 2019, when the Nationals won the World Series, the celebration, the parade for the celebration was there. Was right near the mall, so we'll end with this amazing photograph there. So thank you so much for coming tonight. Have a great rest of your evening, and have a good night.